You don't have to rise because he was just a president. Yeah, General.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, ladies. Good people are United States of America. The instance for new election of a citizen to administer our executive branch of government being not far removed, I thought at this time it proper that I apprise you of a decision that I have reached, which is that my name shall not be amongst the number from whom your choice shall be made. I have long hoped that I might be allowed to return to the peaceable retirement from which I have been so reluctantly drawn. But the confused and perplexed state of our affairs, both domestic and abroad, have caused me to forego my own personal preferences. Stepping away as I now do from the public stage, I cannot fail but to look with gratitude upon the many honors that you have placed upon my brow and the continuing support that you as a people have given me. We are taught by the ancients that there is no greater honor that any man may hope to achieve than recognition by his neighbors and virtuous countrymen for service to his nation. And so for that recognition, I am certainly grateful. Perhaps here I ought to stop. That my continuing concern for your happiness and felicity as a people causes me to wish to share with you certain opinions that I have come to. Remarks which I hope will be received by you, not as coming from the President of these United States of America, but rather simply the words of a departing friend. You cannot hope for any personal gain by having shared them with you. In these last several years, we've all learned to look upon the union of our states with great love and affection. And so it should be. For a country which defends your rights and your liberties, it has the right to concentrate your affection. There is no greater honor that may be bestowed upon you than your title of American, which bestirs the truly patriotic heart far more than any honors which may be given by mere regional distinction. We are all, with little difference, quite similar. We worship the same God. We speak the same language. We enjoy the same political principles and customs. The independence and liberty, which is now ours, is the result of joint efforts, joint struggles, joint disappointments, and joint successes. 16 states, all pulling against one another, and every one of them tugging against the federal head, will certainly bring upon us our ruin. That is as clear to me as ever was the sun in its meridian brightness. Whereas a wise and liberal constitution, closely watched and guarded to prevent encroachment, that gives us every reason to suppose that we might obtain that level of dignity and respect that we had every promise of achieving. In these last few years, we've all been made witnesses of the most novel and astonishing spectacles of an entire people gathered together peacefully to determine for themselves under what form of government they believe they will live most happy. The people of our United States of Canada. And with mature deliberation, it created a new written constitution far superior to its predecessor. One that provides for a balance of its powers and allows for its own amendment. In truth, it may well be said that the most important of all of our political principles and customs is this ability to amend our systems of government. But let us always remember that just as with any other human institution, that time and experience are just as necessary to determine the usefulness of governments and constitutions. Let us never enter into alteration or change simply for the want of innovation or novelty. Likewise, before such alteration is made by the will of the people as a whole, by those means provided for within the 5th article of the Constitution, let us remember that that document is the rule and guide of our land. It must therefore be given all due respect and dignity. There is no more power granted unto our general government than that which is absolutely necessary, the business of good government. These powers are divided twixt the legislative, executive, and judicial branch, in such fashion that there may never rise an aristocracy, a monarchy, an oligarchy, or any other form of despotic or tyrannic government, provided there remains virtue within the breast of our people. For, by way of this Constitution, the sovereignty of our nation shall always reside with its people. Let us never allow any branch of our government to encroach upon the powers of the other two. For such encroachment tends to concentrate all the powers of government into just a few hands, and it is a true form of despotism. But there may well arise some occasion where such encroachment appears to give some temporary benefits, or perhaps to increase our national security. We must always be mindful that it is by encroachment that one finds the usual means by which free governments are destroyed. Therefore, any benefit which may be had on the short term is greatly outweighed by the evils of such precedents. If there is some error in how the powers of our government be distributed, let them be altered. But let them be altered by amendment and never by encroachment. When I began, I mentioned that we should endeavor to avoid seeing faction arise by way of regional distinction. But it's just as important that we endeavor to avoid seeing factions arise by the spirit and fury of party politics. The alternating domination of one political party over another, spurred on by the spirit of revenge, will always serve to drive a nation further and further from its better interests and greater counsels. It causes a man not to be a servant to his nation, but nothing more than a servant to a political party. Now, I'm aware that some of you may argue that this tendency towards political faction, that it is necessary to keep a government free. And that may be so in those governments of a more monarchical cast. But in any truly free government such as our own, there will always be enough difference of opinion for any salutary purpose without the creation of political parties. Likewise, there may be those amongst your number who may make the argument that this tendency towards faction in general, that it's simply a portion of our human natures. And I don't deny that. But have we not in other matters endeavored to improve upon the way that nature finds us? To guide ourselves not by our irregular passions and desires, but rather instead by reason and conscience? So too must we learn to circumscribe our tendency towards faction. Political party is a very dangerous fire, which if allowed to smolder unwatched, will soon consume everything before it. As it is a pillar of both our strength and our security, let us always endeavor to preserve public credit. One of the best means by which public credit may be preserved is to avoid spending it unnecessarily, remembering always that timely disbursements to provide for a nation's defense are oftentimes more affordable than those occasions of necessary war when they arise without such preparation. And when we find ourselves in those circumstances of necessary war, let us remember that the debts caused by such actions must be paid, and never left ungenerously to be paid by our children or our children's children, which ought to have been paid by ourselves. Now, this last maxim is, of course, the responsibility of your representatives within the legislature. Now, public opinion has a portion of which it must play, which is simply this, that for debt to be paid, there must be revenue. And for there to be revenue, there must be taxes. And there have never been taxes created which are not inconvenient and unpleasant. As to our foreign affairs, let us reach our hands across the ocean as friends. Let us endeavor to see peace and harmony expanded across the globe. Religion and morality both enjoin us to such action, and can it somehow be that good policy does not likewise engender similar counsel? Let us reach our hands across the ocean as friends. Let us endeavor to see our commerce expand. But there let our relations with foreign powers end. Let us never allow our affairs of state to be driven by too strong of an affection, or for that matter, too strong of a hatred for a foreign nation. For again, these are forms of slavery. The one, a nation becomes a slave to its affection, and the other a slave to its hatred. Too much love for a foreign country causes a nation to imagine common interests and sympathies where in truth none exist. And too much hatred for a foreign nation causes a country to too easily take offense, and therefore to too easily be drawn into unnecessary war. We all find ourselves in the most remarkable circumstances. Providence has made us the sole lords and proprietors of the vast tract of continent, one that provides us with all the soils of the earth and with many of its climates, which therefore might provide us with all the necessities of life and many of its conveniences. By way of our victory over Great Britain, we are now generally acknowledged to be in the complete possession of our own independence and liberty. And Providence has now crowned those previous blessings. By way of our Constitution, and more recently, our Bill of Rights, with a greater promise of political happiness that any nation is heretofore been offered. Why would we forego these advantages? To step away from our own native soils, to engage in foreign wars which are no concern of our own. The war in Europe, twixt the Republic of France and the crowned heads of that place, it is an ancient feud. It is not an American concern. Let us not allow ourselves to grow embroiled in foreign entanglements. I do not suppose that any of these words I've shared with you will long be remembered. If they occasionally come to mind, to serve to protect our nation from false patriotism, or the spirit and fury of party politics, or leave us disengaged in foreign intrigues, I for one will certainly be satisfied. Whether or not I've been guided by these maxims myself these last 8 years, I believe the public record will answer. But let me affirm to you all here and now that I have always at least considered myself guided by them. But I'm full aware of my own shortcomings. I imagine that I must have committed many errors. I beseech the Almighty to reduce whatever evils these may tend towards. And I hope that you, the people, when you will look upon those, that you will do so with indulgence. With the knowledge that any errors I may have committed have never been from a malignancy of my heart, but rather simply a want of talent equal to the zealousness of my patriotism. I look forward now to stepping away from the public stage, taking my place alongside you as a common citizen in a free and independent United States of America. I believe that we are all, from here forward, to be viewed as players on a most conspicuous of stages, one that seems destined by Providence for displays of human greatness and felicity. Our systems of government, they're not perfect. But no more perfect government could possibly have been created at this epoch. And I don't doubt that there may be promises put forth that we, as a people, have yet to achieve. But see, that is now our responsibility together, all of us, to make good upon those unanswered promises. And I, for one, take strength in my knowledge that Providence, after having already aided us in numerous previous dangers and hazards, does not now intend to leave its work alone, but to rely alone on Providence, without exerting ourselves to the utmost. That will serve nothing but to tempt Providence. Addison tells us in his excellent play Cato that mortals cannot command success, but we can do something more important. We can endeavor to be worthy of success. Let us continue to put our spirits and our fortitude to the greatest of challenges that we might prove worthy. I feel much the same. And it is with that, I felt I would make myself available to answer what questions or concerns that I might regarding my intentions of stepping away from this office, or those remarks I made earlier, or those matters of the past that have brought us to this point, or anything else, I suppose, of a public nature, for which I might provide an answer. Have any of you questions or concerns I may address? We'll be here. Yes.
I